call our meeting to order. February 23rd, 2022. Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, this meeting has been duly advertised in the South Jersey Times and the Sentinel. The municipal clerk of the township has been duly notified, and the requirements of posting of notices have been met. Would please stand and pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bellis? Selly? Cunningham? Here. Doherty? Here. Doyle? Here. Rosso? Here. Keane?
Here.
Trace? Grant?
Here.
We have a quorum.
First item on our agenda this evening is swearing in of our new board member, Mrs. Michelle Whitman. Is that under one?
And just repeat after me. I,
Michelle BOE,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and to the governments established in the United States and this state
and to the governments established in the United States and this state,
under the authority of the people.
under the authority of the people, so help me God.
I
Michelle BOE,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office of member of the Board of Education,
for the office of member of the Board of Education,
and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A:12-1,
nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A:12-1,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform
all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability.
all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability. So help me God.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Bill. The next item we have this evening is our recognition of our teacher, of the government teacher of the year. We have 3 teachers of the year to recognize, and then our educational service professional. I believe Mr. Bishop, 2 of the individuals are your school. See if you have any notes. You'd like to go ahead and do that.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. At this time, I'd like to recognize the Mary F. Jambier Elementary School Teacher of the Year, Miss Christy Ritz. Miss Ritz, if you come on up. Miss Ritz is currently in her 15th year in education, with the entirety of this time being at Mary F. Jambier Elementary School. She's currently assigned as a special education teacher in the school's K-2 self-contained setting. She's a graduate of Lenape High School, has a Bachelor of Arts degree in elementary education from the University of Delaware, a Master of Arts degree in special education from Rowan University, and her supervisor's certification from Rowan University. Ms. Ritz is a lifelong learner who is always looking for new exemplary practices to incorporate into instruction in an effort to assist her students as she remains dedicated towards building her students' self-confidence in a manner that leads them to succeed. Ms. Ritz leads the students towards the recognition of their strengths and the building of meaningful learning goals that will ready them for their future. Ms. Ritz serves the Jambier Elementary School community as a member of the School Spirit Committee. She is a true professional who consistently demonstrates a high degree of dedication towards the education of her students. In her spare time, Ms. Ritz enjoys traveling, volunteering with the New Jersey Boxer Rescue, relaxing on the beach in Margate, and spending time with her family. Congratulations, Ms. Ritz. Wonderful. You can tell I'm smiling by the wrinkles. Congratulations, Ms. Ritz. Okay, it's also my honor as the principal of Mary F. Jambier Elementary School to recognize the Township of Franklin Public School District's Educational Services Professional of the Year, as she is a member of the Mary F. Jambier Elementary School staff. At this time, I'd like to call School Counselor Mrs. Rochelle Sepielli forward. Mrs. Sepielli has been with us for 4 years as our school counselor, and she has a total of 5 years in the field of education. A graduate of Clearview Regional High School, she holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Speech, Language Pathology, and Audiology from Stockton University. She also holds a Master of Arts degree in Counseling in Educational Settings from Rowan University. Ms. Sepielli is a dedicated, knowledgeable professional who assists students as they build their social-emotional skills and academic foundation. Mrs. Sepielli is often observed leading positive, supportive activities that focus on children's current needs while planting the seeds of effective problem-solving and relevant coping mechanisms. Ms. Sepielli serves the Jambier Elementary community in a myriad of ways. These include her leadership of Jambier's Character Education Safety Climate Committee, leadership of the 504 and the INRS committees, membership of the School Spirit Committee, membership on the District Leadership Committee, and she works with other school personnel to coordinate multiple holiday charitable drives. Mrs. Sepielli is a dedicated, dependable, and perceptive professional who consistently demonstrates flexibility and a superior work ethic to meet the needs of our students. In her spare time, Mrs. Sepielli enjoys vacationing in Sea Isle City and Florida, volunteering with local animal rescue organizations, taking day trips to the beach, and spending time with family and friends. Congratulations, Mrs. Sepielli. Wonderful. Congratulations. At this time, I'd like to introduce Main Road School Principal, Mrs. Amy Morley.
I'm proud to announce Main Roads Teacher of the Year, Mrs. Simmons. Come on up. Mrs. Simmons is an exceptional teacher. She welcomes all of her students in her class with warm and a positive attitude, just like a mom. Regardless of their ability level, she ensures all of her students are exposed to the curriculum and have multiple opportunities to engage in math. She is not just amazing with her students, but also with the staff and the parents. She builds relationships with parents to support her students. She provides tutoring before school and takes time out of her day to meet with parents to create positive classroom family. She is also a leader in the 3rd grade math team. She has been a team leader for more than 4 years in 3rd grade. She designs curriculum, troubleshoots issues, and leads data reviews. We at Main Road cannot ask for a better example as Teacher of the Year.
Thank you, Mrs. Morley. Announce that Mrs. Chrissy Lott as the Caroline Ritter School Teacher of the Year. Mrs. Lott has demonstrated herself as an effective educator over the past 17 years, including the past 10 teaching 5th grade mathematics at Ritter School. Mrs. Lott graduated from the Lebanon Valley College with her Bachelor's of Science degree in elementary education. And within her position as a mathematics teacher, Mrs. Lott has motivated a vast array of learners with her intriguing lessons and pedagogical methods. Most noted by her colleagues are Mrs. Lott's dedication as an educator and her motivational strategies that encourage all students to participate in their personal learning process. A fellow teacher described Mrs. Lott as a problem solver, an innovator, and a guide. Mrs. Lott is always seeking out the most effective and engaging activities to benefit students in their learning process. It's not uncommon to see Mrs. Lott meeting with her colleagues to further enhance her instructional process of her academic team. Mrs. Lott is also credited for leading the school's academic incentive program, our RAM Ready program, which provides motivational incentives for students to strive for individual academic excellence. She is also actively involved in our school's Climate and Culture Committee, mentoring program, and Green Team. As the faculty liaison to our school's PTO, Mrs. Lott serves as the connection with the different activities that the PTO has organized for our school. Finally, as one of Mrs. Lott's fellow departmental colleagues stated, Chrissy is an educator who can boost your spirits with simply just her smile. Her love for her job and students shows through in every single thing she does. Chrissy's genuine, kind-hearted nature and nurturing personality towards students, in combination with her fun, student-friendly lessons and activities, makes her the ideal candidate to be the Ritter School Teacher of the Year. Congratulations. Congratulations. Mr. Grant, return the floor back to you. Thank you very much, by the way, for allowing the three of us to provide these presentations tonight in order to recognize the fine educators that we have here in the audience.
Congratulations to all these different we have our student activity report from our main grade representatives, Mr. Stell and Ms. Vine. Come
on up. Ready? You have the clicker, right? Who's going first? Both of you going first? Who's going to the mic? She's got the clicker.
Good evening and welcome to our Main Road Spotlight Report.
My name is Savannah Bott and I'm in Mrs. Yacovilla's 4th grade class.
And my name is Gavin Stoll. I'm in Miss Kirk's 4th grade class.
Our school's theme this year is bright. We are so happy to be back in school. Main Road students are working hard to achieve learning goals with a bright and positive mindset. Here are some amazing things going on at our school.
In January, Miss Maruso and Miss Carabo's 3rd grade class learned about government studies. They had an election for class president. The students learned how the voting process works in the United States and why it is important to vote in elections.
Each student was asked to give a presentation in the class about why they should be president. They filled out voter registration cards, cast their ballots in a private voting booth, and got their I voted today sticker on the way out. What a fun way for our students to learn about the election process.
In Mrs. Moreau's and Mr. Rick's 4th grade class, students had an amazing science lesson about how electrical circuits work. They learned how building electrical circuits and transfer energy from place to place. Students made observations and provided evidence about energy.
During this hands-on activity, students used batteries, copper tape, and LED light bulbs. After trial and error, they were able to create their very own working circuit and were able to control the connection with a workable switch. Students then created a drawing of their circuit to illustrate their new scientific knowledge.
In Miss Yacovelli's 4th grade math class, they made fraction flowers. Students wrote word problems in the middle of the flower and showed their work on the petals. The word problems were created by adding and subtracting mixed numbers, decomposing fractions, or using equivalent fractions. This was a really fun and great math experience for everyone.
We said hello to the beginning of February with Groundhog's Day. We had a Winter Wednesday theme day. Are you Team Winter like Mrs. Morley or Team Spring? It was so much fun seeing Mrs. Morley dressed up like a groundhog. She is the best and makes coming to school so much fun.
In the month of February, we reached our goal and raised over $6,000 for the American Heart Association's Kids Heart Challenge. In Mr. Capisi's gym class, we learned the importance of physical activity and how heart disease is the #1 cause of death in the United States.
We built a tribute wall with the names of people affected with heart disease. It's amazing to see how many people this disease affects. Thanks to everyone who gave to this great cause.
Let the games begin. On February 4th, we had a red, white, and blue day to honor the beginning of the 2022 Winter Olympics. In Miss Urian's fourth grade class celebrated by participating in some indoor Olympic challenges like mini golf, paddleboard, shoot your shot, and frisbee.
Our related arts teachers also celebrated with lessons and activities about the Olympics. We learned about the flags of the world, made foil sculptures of athletes, found the tempo and beat of the Olympic fanfare music, competed in a roller bobsled relay, and had the typing Olympics with many medals being awarded.
In February is also Black History Month. We learned about many influential African Americans. Students helped give and dedicate a heart to many African Americans throughout history. Students also had fun learning about Black History Month during our morning meetings and even had a word search challenge.
In Mrs. Swope's social studies class, students are busy researching and creating Google slideshows about Martin Luther King.
Our library was turned into our annual book fair. Students were excited and eager to search for their special purchases. Thanks to our Main Road PTO for organizing this annual event.
We continued our fun-filled February with our Week of Kindness. It started with Friendship Day. Students wore pink and red while delivering friendship cards to their classmates.
Other days included Crazy Hair for Kindness Day, Diversity Day, Rainbow Day, and Wild About Main Road Day.
Here at Main Road School, we challenged everyone to choose and perform a random act of kindness, like giving a compliment to as many people as you can, or letting someone go ahead of you while waiting in line.
Spreading kindness helps make Main Road School a better place. Don't forget that kindness can make a difference in our world.
Reporting for Main Road School, my name is Savannah Byer.
And my name is Gabby Stell.
Thank
you and have a great night.
Thank you guys so much for coming out this evening and doing an update on what's been going on over at Main Road. It's nice to see all the exciting things you guys have been learning and some of the things we're working on. So it's great. Moving on this evening, before we have our annual audit report, we do, I think it's probably appropriate to take a 5-minute recess if anybody wants to take photos with the Teacher of the Year recipients or any case, we'll reconvene in a few minutes. And feel free to stick around for the rest of the meeting if you don't feel obligated to. Thank you. to reconvene and move on. The next item on our agenda is the annual audit report. We have Mr. Holt here this evening to present that report. So I believe the report can be found
in the administrative content area.
In the administrative content area under, I'm looking for it.
Under number 3, annual audit, under
Number 3, if you guys want to follow along with Mr. Holt. But Mike, go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm going to go over the results of the 2021 audit. It's a long document. It's 180 pages. I just put together a little synopsis just to go over the highlights. There are 3 different opinions that are in the report. The first one, the independent auditor's report, is on pages 17 and 19. This is a report given by our accounting firm that lays out the auditor's responsibilities, the management's responsibilities. The audit was conducted in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States, government auditing standards, and the requirements set by the New Jersey State Department of Education. And I'm happy to report that an unmodified opinion has been rendered on the financial statements. That's the best type of opinion that can be rendered. Financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects as of June 30th, 2021. I want to point you on to a matter of emphasis on that report. There was a new GASB 84 that came out this year, and it removed the information that was reported in the past on the fiduciary funds into the governmental funds. So I just want to pinpoint that out, that the student activity funds, the unemployment compensation funds, and the payroll funds are now in the governmental funds. They're not in those outside schedules. But again, a really good job there. There's also a report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance. That's pages 167 to 168. The accounting firm reviewed and evaluated the internal controls and tested for compliance with New Jersey laws and regulations. There were no internal control weaknesses and no non-compliance that was found between opinion. So again, very good results. And as you guys remember, when the school district expends in excess of $750,000 of federal aid or state aid, triggers another level of auditing that needs to be done in accordance with federal guidelines, single of that. And this year we chose the special education cluster to test, the federal programs, and the state aid public for the state programs. And again, wonderful results and unmodified opinion. The district complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on each of the federal and state programs for the year ended June 30th, 2021. When we come to do the audit, we're here a couple of weeks. There's a ton of things that we look at for internal control, compliance issues, checklist of things. So again, congratulations to the finance department. Wonderful job in bringing in there. Very nice. Governmental funds. Governmental funds are on page 43 and 44. Exhibit B1 and B2 goes over the different governmental funds that the district has. The general fund, the main operating fund balance increased $794,000. There's almost $5.6 million sitting in total fund balances, and I'll go over that detail on the next page. And then the special revenue fund, you do have some numbers left in there fund balance this year, and that's because the student funds, the student activity funds, got moved because of GASB 84 out of fiduciary funds and into the governmental funds, Fund 20, the special revenue fund. Capital projects fund had no activity, and your debt service fund, you paid down your normal principal interest that was there. Food service fund did well. That increased $124,000 per year. A lot of that is due to the free lunch reimbursements that came along during the pandemic. Everybody had a free lunch breakfast, and there were a lot more revenues coming in. So that fund is very good, a little over $200,000 at the end of the year. Fund balance summary for the general fund. Because of COVID, you guys had a deficit in your revenues when you compared to the budget by about $95,000. Tuition was under budget by about $230,000 for the year. Transportation was down about $19,000 compared to the budget. The good news is the unexpended appropriations They were up 4.4 million. That left total fund balance being generated of $4.3 million. When we take out what was budgeted with the prior year encumbrances and the fund balances of $3,497,000, we had a net fund balance generated of $807,000 for the year that you can find on the C1 exhibit. Total budget appropriations were $26.3 billion. Total actual expenditures were $22 billion, spent about 84% of the budget. And then again, the fund balances at the end of the year, really good numbers here. You've got capital reserve money of $2,775,000. That's up a couple $100,000 from last year. That can be used for future capital projects for the district. Your maintenance reserve money stayed the same, $1,377,000. You have a new unemployment reserve that's in this fund for $362,000. That can be used as you go along with your budget. And if you have any items you need for unemployment, you can take money from those reserves. And you use $736,000 in the current budget, 21-22 that we're in now. And the unreserved, unassigned fund balance at June 30th, 2021 is $974,000. It's a big jump from the year before. It's a jump because the Assembly of the State, there's Assembly Bill S-2691 that allowed districts to go from the 2% max to the 4% max. The school district is there at the 4% max, double of what it was the year before. $974,000 is what you have there that can be used for the 22-23 budget. So you've got the maximum amount of money put away for the year. No comments, no recommendations, no corrective action plan that you guys need to do. Really a great job by the finance office, by the board, by everybody. You should be proud of the results. Keep up the good work. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
Any board members have any comments for Mr. Holt? I know everyone's read the 191-page report thoroughly.
That's okay. That's why we come to go over this. But again, great results. Thank you. And Trish, thank you. And thank the staff for the courtesies we were extended to.
Yeah, I just want to extend our thanks to you and the auditing team that come in. Most people get frightened or hear the word audit and they get scared, but it's very nice to work with you guys, very easy to work with, and it's always a pleasure. And I definitely want to give a shout out to my team in my office, accounts payable, payroll, my assistant, superintendent's office. It's obviously not a one-man game. So thanks to everybody.
And continue to reach out to us during the year when you have questions.
You're welcome.
For sure.
Thanks so much, Frank.
Great. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
All right. Sorry to get back to my spot on the agenda here. We have the next item is our self-assessment for our grade with the Anti-Bullying Rights Act. Mrs. Dobzhansky, I'm assuming we'll be reporting those results this evening. So, Mrs. Dobzhansky.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So some of you, I know, have heard this spiel before, but there's a lot of new people, so I'm just going to kind of summarize what happens with the self-assessment. So it's all about him. This reporting period was from last year. And what happens is that the school safety/climate team sits down and they rate themselves on eight core elements of him. So, and then what happens is that a few months back, I actually reported on the state's report of us reporting ourselves. So basically we submit our results, and then based on the information that we submit throughout the year on programs, on training, on the number of HIBs, on the HIB reporting deadline, they either confirm how we rated ourselves, or else they tell us that we felt you rated yourself too high, too low, and so forth. So this is just the initial phase. There's a possible 78 points, so each school has their own. And I'm just going to review the scores for everybody. So Ritter had a total score of 75 out of 78. Last year they were actually at 76. Main Road had a score this year of 72 out of 78. Last year they were exactly the same, 72. And then Canbier scored themselves a 72 out of 78. Last year they were a 71. So COVID, good job, you got 1 point. When I looked through the elements and how they kind of differ from this year, a lot of what I feel the lower scores were was because of COVID. Being that we were only on a modified day, we didn't have as many assemblies, so some of the areas that we kind of scored ourselves a little bit lower in were getting to get information out to students, having trainings and programs available. But honestly, like looking through all of this, we either met or exceeded in every core element. So I think they're doing a great job. I do have specifics if you want to know like what we did to score ourselves a 3 in. If you want to go through all that, I don't know if you are interested.
Any board members?
I mean, it includes trainings, you know, whether or not we reported things in a timely manner, whether or not we then reported it and put things on the website, whether or not the staff is getting their training every year, programs and so forth. So like I said, everything, you can either rate yourself a 3, which is exceeds, a 2, which is meets, a 1, which is partially meets, and a 0, which is does not meet anything. So like these scores are pretty good in my opinion, because we're meeting and exceeding in the majority of areas. So
is there any area across the district that we aren't meeting or we know maybe a weakness?
This year there was one area where everyone scored themselves a 2, and that was the members of the school safety, school climate team were providing the professional development and effective practices of successful school climate programs or approaches. So I mean, we were at a 2, but last year we actually were at a 3, and I think a lot of it was because a lot of the trainings that occurred last year were about, you know, virtual instruction and COVID and all that. So that is one area, but when I look back to the previous year, like that wasn't a concern. So if there's like no patterns from year to year, in my opinion. Other than that, I don't think there was any. The other area that we scored ourselves a little bit lower was the HIP policy was discussed with students. So I think again, not having the opportunities to have the assemblies and to do as much of that, we all scored ourselves at a 3 or at a 2, and last year we were at a 3 for all of that. But other than that, they're kind of scattered. Because I do have last year's results. So thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you, Mrs. Delzanti.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have our first public comment section for agenda items only. Just real quickly, I wanted to touch on some of the items that we have listed for discussion on the agenda under old business, which would be the mask mandate relative to how we're going to proceed after March the 7th. Also, I assume masking on the school buses will be a topic of discussion. And then we also have contact tracing listed for discussion. So just wanted to clarify those in case anyone would like to comment on either one of those items in the first public portion. So with that, I make a motion. We open to the public. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Anyone from the public like to comment this evening? Mrs. Biriak? Are we using the microphone or? You want the microphone, Mrs. Biriak? Okay. Yeah, you are. Yeah, we can hear you.
I have a teacher voice. I just wanted to first congratulate the newly seated board members. Thank you for your service. I've been an educator and a resident in this district for over 20 years. And I've seen a lot of change and a lot of boards. So good luck. And I understand that change is hard to accept, and that's okay. I sent a letter to be forwarded to you after the last board meeting. My biggest concern with what happened at the last board meeting isn't the result. It's that we're making decisions without including all of the stakeholders. There are a lot of people in this district that care about this community and our schools. Me being one for over 20 years. A lot of people came to me after that and asked why that happened. I don't have the answers. I wish I did. Moving forward, I wish that we could be included in some of the decision makings, especially when it involves the entire community. Our teachers, our bus drivers, our aides, our custodians, our students, our caretakers, our parents. They're all very important people. Something that we do, quick and easy, a survey. It allows people to voice their opinions, their viewpoints, and it's something you can learn from. It's information that you as a board can glean about this community and how we really feel about things that aren't being blasted in social media. Because there's a lot of us that don't participate in that, and a lot of opinions that are not being taken into consideration. I just wanted to take a moment to thank our school nurses for taking on the liability and our administration for working hard to keep our school district open when there were a lot of school districts that were unable to remain open all year. We worked together and there was a lot going on behind the scenes for many, many hours that some of us may not be aware of. I know I'm certainly not aware of everything. And a lot happened to keep us open. And we did work together as a team, all of us worked together as a team to make sure that our schools stayed open for us, for our kids, for our parents and community. That's all I wanted to say. It's just if in the future, if there's something, can you please just consider all of the stakeholders, all of the people in this community who care about this district and care about where it's going. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public with a comment? Seeing no one, I make a motion we close the first public portion. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Just also, before we move on, I do want to acknowledge that I did receive an email from Mrs. Buriak. I'm assuming the rest of the board members did as well, so I wanted to confirm that we did receive that, Mrs. Buriak.
Thank you, Mr.
Sure. Moving on, we have the need for a brief executive session just to review our personnel agenda.
Mike has a couple of things he wants to talk to you about as well.
Okay, Mike, you have some additional?
A couple of legal items.
Legal items, and then maybe myself or Mrs. Doherty will give a very quick update on where we're at with negotiations. We don't really have much to report, but we can fill you in on our initial meeting with the teaching staff. So with that, I make a motion. So what do you think, 20 minutes? I mean, personnel negotiations won't take long at all. Half hour tops, hopefully sooner. So I make a motion, we move into executive session, 6:45. Do I have a second? All in favor? Opposed? Should we come back into our regular session, 7:17 p.m.? Do I have a second? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? School board president report. I don't have anything specific to report this evening. Mrs. Caselli, do you have anything from the NJSBA?
There is new board member orientation March 4th, 5th, 7th, and 11th. Governance 2, Governance 3, and Governance 4 are March 21st. But then Governance 1 for new board members is going to be in April. That's it.
Are those all online, or are any of those in person?
It's all virtual.
Okay. Is there any county meet? I know, I think.
I can see one this time.
Okay, because Ms. Bellis had asked at our last meeting, you obviously weren't here due to COVID, but just keep her up to date. She's interested in attending some of the meetings. I told her that I'd follow up with you, and so.
I'll let you know. Yeah, Jason Garrett.
Moving on, we have our minutes from the work session, regular board meeting from January 24th. Has everyone had an opportunity to review them? If so, I make a motion to approve the minutes as listed. Do I have a second? Are there any revisions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Abstention from Mrs. Doyle and Mrs. Caselli. Human resources.
Do you want to recognize that?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. That's under
Under H4.
H4, yes. We would like to recognize a retiree this evening that's listed under number 4 on our HR agenda, Mrs. Kathleen Rosa, art teacher over at Caroline Ricker. She's been with the district for 33 years, so she'll obviously be missed. And but congratulations to Mrs. Rosa on her retirement.
Not sure what's causing that, but
Yeah. So moving on with our HR, obviously we just reviewed this all in executive session. So other than the policies, any other questions? If not, I guess we'll have Mrs. Cunningham review the policies.
Sure. The policy committee met, and the items of policy that you see were alerts from Strauss Esme. I'll go over them briefly. If you have any questions, or if you should be able to add, let me know. Policy 2415.05, which is in surveys, basically states that those surveys which are funded wholly or in part by the government, we have to get parental consent for those types. We don't do many of those. Our policy 9560 covers our surveys, and as we looked at it, we did notice that while parents have an opt-out, we decided to change, which is why that policy's in there. We decided to change it so that parents are notified first that the survey will be given, and then that way, if they want to opt out, they have the ability to do that. So that kind of covers both of those. Policy NREG 2622 are basically just a little bit revised. They're a little bit more detailed. One of those being that the New Jersey State Board of Education is now implementing an approved ELL proficiency assessment for those with IEPs. But it's a little more detailed than ours, so it's really the language for that. Our policy 3233 and 7540 were basically just language, changing freeholders, the term freeholders to commissioners, to go along with what the state has done. Policy and regulation 8465, bias crimes and bias acts, basically is just changing so that all bias-related incidents have to be reported to local law enforcement and to the county, which with our MOA, with our local police department, we do already, but it just kind of encompasses everything that happens in terms of bias. Policy 9560 allows, like again, that's the one I just talked about where we just changed it so that we're notifying parents about surveys, and that way they'll know if they want to opt out or not. And that is pretty much it. I think I've read them all.
Any questions from anyone? Did you want to discuss the remote meeting policy now, or should we do that under old business? Or? Did you guys have anything on the?
Well, did we ask if we could draft a policy for it?
Yeah, I mean the policy committee didn't really come up with anything. So, did you have anything from your notes, Michelle? I mean,
Well,
I
based
don't know what.
on the recommendations from administration and also Mike's recommendation, we did not pen a policy on that.
What was the recommendation?
To not have one.
What's that recommendation?
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I don't. I was at the policy committee meeting, and I didn't really interpret that from the memo that Mike had sent. He had actually offered some suggestions of language to put in the policy.
So if there's no policy, can we just do it anyway then?
Well, that was a part of the discussion that we had at the policy committee meeting, but I mean, some draft policies were sent out with our weekly update back in the end of January, beginning of March, of different options that are available to us. I mean, I printed out one of them. I don't know if everyone had an opportunity to review them or not, but there was a couple, which I guess came from, I don't know if this came from Strauss Esme or a different district.
there was one from Strauss Esme, one from school boards.
Okay. And these were sent, like I said, in the weekly update. There's the document I'm looking at has option 1 and option 2. I mean, personally, I think option 1 would probably be most appropriate, and I believe that's the one that Mr. Borelli had referenced in his memo with some language changes. I don't know. Was that ever distributed to the board? The memo from Mr. Borelli, or
It's on the agenda.
is it on the agenda?
Let's see. You know what, no, my apologies. The memo that Mr. Borelli sent me was sent to just, yeah, you know what, maybe it was sent in the weekly update. Let me back up.
I didn't see it.
I tried it.
Yeah, it went to the policy committee. I don't know if it went to.
I didn't see it.
It was in,
Is it in a weekly update?
it was in a,
Well, in any event, this is what we're working with here, and I don't know if any other board members have any input as to their opinion on what was sent. But again, I'll reiterate that option 1 in the 1 draft policy looks pretty comprehensive to me. With no, I didn't find any of Mr. Borelli's suggestions objective. I'm sorry, I didn't object to any of his suggestions. So I don't know if we want to proceed with that or.
Mr. Brand, I have a question.
Sure.
I have a question.
Sure.
Policy 2415.05, student analysis, surveys, evaluations, examinations, tests, etc. Does that include instructional material and supplemental materials? Or is this just relevant to physical and health?
I'm sorry, you lost me. Is that one of the ones that we have listed this evening?
It is one of the policies listed here, yeah.
Okay, I'll defer that question to
2415.05.
Mrs. Cunningham.
as far as I know from our discussion, it only relates to surveys.
Just
Surveys, analysis, evaluation, examine context, for curriculum. It's when a survey is sent out or some type of examination or testing is done and it's funded by the government, federal government, we have to get approval from parents regarding it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to email you.
Okay.
Well, you want to distribute the memo, and we can circle back on that. I mean, is there a preference with the board? Do you want to address it this evening, or you want to table it till
Yeah.
we have?
What was the recommendation that we don't have one? Why?
I don't think there was no recommendation that we don't have one.
Well, one of the things, and go ahead, Mike, you can speak.
To answer your first question, I don't think you should do it without a policy. I think you're going to open the door to just a haphazard consideration of the issue. So you should have a policy, or not have a policy. Do it or not do it. I did the memorandum for the policy committee, and then they made a recommendation. That's basically how it worked, along with Troy's recommendation. So if the full board wants to look at the memo, I mean, they should look at it, but I wouldn't say you want to try to digest it tonight, because it makes reference to the other 2 policies and some cutting and pasting and so forth. I essentially said that it is not favorable based upon the purpose of the Open Public Meetings Act, but it indicated if the board was going to do it, it should be very restrictive, and then recommended what it would be. That's basically what the amendment speaks for itself, but that's basically what it says.
Now, at the policy committee meeting, we also talked about it not really being necessary because the only time it really we needed, we didn't have a quorum. And that's not really a problem in our board.
I think it is needed to represent the voters appropriately. Last meeting, we had someone not be able to participate and make a pretty important vote because she had COVID. I mean, I think for all transparency and all participation, we should encourage it. And you guys pretty much tried to remove a lot of participation, but then when we were trying to encourage a way to improve participation,
diversity that we can have on board to just people that are not essential 9 to 5 or no jobs at all. It's not really what we're looking for to encourage, you know, a well-rounded board.
No, I agree that we definitely need a policy. I was obviously the one with the COVID last time. I was sick. I could have attended the meeting because I was getting better at the time, but I still was exhibiting a lot of symptoms. And there's a reason that I shouldn't have been able to attend virtually for that meeting. We definitely have to have a policy.
I think that's life. You get sick, you miss meetings. I think you are in a public position as we are. Usually you come to the meeting, and unfortunately you're sick, you're sick. You're on vacation, you're on vacation. I think a vote in person is a lot different than a vote behind a screen. And I think it's important you come here.
How's it different?
It's a lot harder to vote behind a screen than it is in person.
How? You just say yes or no.
Right. I disagree. I disagree. Just
Based
because
on-
COVID was going through my household doesn't mean that I should have been restricted from the meeting.
Before COVID, there was a flu. We didn't have us.
And now this is a lot more contagious.
But not even that, but now we have the ability to do this and to encourage this and to have this. Like, why wouldn't you want to do it? Why would you want us to be more transparent? Why would you want things to be more, you know, equal across the board?
I don't think it has anything to do with transparency, because to set up anything virtual, that puts more work on our administration, number one. Number two, as Alicia said, there are, we've functioned as a board for years without having virtual. Even through COVID, we were able to function. There are no other, I couldn't find any districts in the surrounding counties that have this policy, because many of them, as probably many of the board, or at least some of us here feel, it's not necessary, because as you sign up for a board, it's an in-person meeting. If you're sick, if you're away, then you're not here. Again, if we had an issue with having a quorum and being able to do board business, then I think that would be an issue, and we would really need to look into it, but we don't. So looking at where we're at and what we have signed up for as board members to come to board meetings, again, if something happens, you can't be here. That happens, and that's fine.
I just think that we have the ability to be able to come or to be able to participate. And I mean, I was elected by the voters, not by somebody on the board. I wasn't, you know, elected by just us.
As we all were.
Not all of us were elected by voters. Some of us were selected by people on the board. And if I think that my vote matters just as much as yours, I think I should be able to vote on it, even if I am busy, even if I am, you know, like not being able to participate in person.
You're busy.
I also was at the last New Jersey Board of Education County meeting, and they strongly suggested for this reason that school districts have a virtual policy for people that cannot.
But none have this policy.
I'm sorry?
No one has this policy.
Well, apparently someone has it, because we have draft copies of it from other districts.
We did our research. No one has it.
And why can't we? Is that a reason?
I gave my reason. I'm not explaining myself anymore.
I mean, I personally feel that everyone should attend the meetings physically, in person, when they're able to do so. However, you know, given the circumstances that we've dealt with the last couple months specifically, we've had members that have been out with, you know, in this particular case, COVID, that have expressed a willingness and a desire to participate and haven't been afforded that. So, you know, I think having a policy doesn't mean that, you know, we're going to encourage people not to attend the meetings physically. It just allows us one more tool to have the ability to have something that regulates whether or not someone can participate by phone or virtually. I mean,
It's a very gray area, and we're opening a can of worms. Who's to say that one sickness is, I don't know.
If you're too sick to come to a meeting, why don't you come to a meeting on the computer? If you're sick, you're sick. You should be sleeping, you should be resting.
Because I was quarantining in my house because COVID was in my house.
but again, it's something that would allow us broader flexibility. I'm not sure what the detriment would be. Like, I mean, I understand some people might think that it would be abused by someone to somehow subvert their obligation to come to the meetings, but that's why we're looking at the policy. And option one, if you read option one, is extremely restrictive as to when this would be permitted. So.
It has to be approved by the board, but
And it also has to be approved by the board. I mean, and again, it's in my opinion that we could allow this to happen at any time should the board, a majority of the board agree to allow it to happen. So putting a policy in place strictly limiting the ability for it to happen is actually beneficial because it outlines, you know, when this particular situation may or may not occur. I mean, you know.
What will the logistics look like if it's done? Because you can't do it virtually here.
And we'd set up and then we'd vote. What if we voted no? So all the setup, and then the people in the, you know, in not we said on the internet world meeting, like, you know, I just don't think it's.
Well, that's the question.
Sure, we have competent administrative staff.
How would we logistically set up, how would that work? How would we be able to work that? Because we couldn't do it in here, correct?
Well, I mean, it depends at what level. I mean, and I'm going to yield to Mr. Borelli on this one. I believe that if you do have a virtual option for a board member, that you need to have a virtual option for the public, correct?
No, that's incorrect. Well, go ahead,
I don't
Mr.
think
Borelli.
you have to have it for both. I think we're talking about something a little different than what we did with the COVID situation. I mean, the downside is pretty sort of obvious. I mean, it's different to have people face to face with each other and with the public than to be remote. It's preferable to be in person. That's part of what the reason for the Open Public Meetings Act. So there's a reason for appearing, you know, personally at a meeting.
Again, you know, say we have a situation where we don't have a quorum. Now we don't have a policy in place to deal with that. So again, putting a policy in place, I don't really see how that's a detriment. It seems more so that you're concerned about the abuse of said policy than you are about the policy itself. So that's why, you know, I think in this particular option, it's very limited and provides very stringent guidelines as to when it would be permitted. And to answer your question, Michelle, I mean, most people have one of these. It's an iPhone. I mean, I can FaceTime somebody, I can call somebody, I can put them right here, and everyone on speakerphone could hear the person speaking and vice versa. So the public, I mean, go in the back room, call me on my phone, and we'll ask the public if they can hear. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's 2022. We have the ability to make this happen. So if we want to make it happen. So.
We also have the ability to have our students do a cyber. We can have parents call in and say, "I want to make a cyber today." The teacher has to teach both ways. It doesn't work that way. Lots of capabilities.
So at this point, I mean, the draft policies have been sent out to everyone for review. Mr. Walton will distribute the memo from Mr. Borelli, and I guess we should be prepared to have a discussion at the next meeting about it, if that's the direction that we want to go, if somebody wants to introduce a policy for consideration. So anything else on that, or anybody? No. So any other questions on human resources? Mrs. Doherty, did you get your answer on policy 1204? Yeah. I make a motion to approve human resource items H1 through H12 as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a second? Any other questions or comments? If not, if you call the roll, please, Trish.
Fregoso?
Yes.
Keen?
Yes.
Trace?
Yes.
Ellis?
Yes.
Caselli?
Yes.
Cunningham?
Yes.
Doherty?
Yes.
Doyle? Grant?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Education, any changes?
Yeah, education very light. I mean, there's only items under I3 and 4, just in-district and out-of-district workshops. You can review them pretty easy. We do have under miscellaneous the approval of the ELL. They call it a plan. It's really just almost a Google form that we have to fill out and submit to the state with just our information. So that has to be housekeeping stuff.
Anyone have any questions on education items? If not, I make a motion to approve education items I1 through I6 as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other comments? Trish?
Try this again.
I was going to say, you want me to do it?
I got it.
All right.
Thank you. Caselli?
Yes.
Cunningham?
Yes.
Doherty?
Yes.
Doyle? Fregoso?
Yes.
Keen?
Yes.
Trace?
Yes.
Bellis?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, operations, Trish?
General admin.
General admin.
General admin, just again, normal stuff from month to month, just again, housekeeping stuff. You will notice that under J7 was the approval of the self-assessment that Mrs. Dobzhansky reported to the board a little earlier. And then as a part of the HIB requirements, we do have to report on the student safety data system any confirmed HIBs. So that we have 4 confirmed HIBs during period 1 from September to December. And then J9, if you want to take a look at our COVID data, I am happy to report that we do not, I think your sore throat's falling off the paper. We do not have any active COVID cases. So that's a positive in that regard.
Great. Any questions? I make a motion to approve administration items J1 through J9 as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a second? Any other comments? If not, Trish, roll please.
Cunningham?
Yes.
Doherty?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Fregoso?
Yes.
Keen?
Yes.
Trace?
Yes.
Bellis?
Yes.
Caselli?
Yes.
Brand?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, operations, Trish?
Yes. Operations, item number 1, claims are listed, and you will see that there is a bill list number 5 that was added earlier this morning for the no check payments. Other than that, everything else was listed previously. Does anybody need time to review? Okay. Seeing none, moving on. Item number 2 are the budget transfer report for the month of December 2021. Item number 3 is the board secretary report and the treasurer report for the month of December 2021. Item 4 is the over expenditure certification by the board for the month of December 31st, 2021. Item 5 is the cafeteria report. Stop me if anybody has a question on any of these. Item 6 is done. Item 7, there are 2 students listed for tuition received, listed there. Item 8 and 9 are none. Item 10 are 2 transportation jointers as listed. Item 11 is none. Item 12, we have the disposal of surplus property for a bus that has reached its end of life. Also seen for number 13, equipment that has reached its end of life. Item 14, a use of facilities request by 2 group and or activity. Item 15 is technology for education and communication consulting for speech services to 1 student while on homebound instruction as listed. Item 16 is the audit resolution to approve that for the 2021 school year. Item 17 is the table for the CARES Emergency Relief Grant, amendment number 3. And last but not least, consultant services for negotiations to utilize Mr. Patrick Duncan as consultant for the hourly rate of $160. Any questions on any of those items?
Trish, on the disposal of equipment, is that follow the same process as the disposal of surplus property?
No, those are pretty much will be taken for scrap metal.
Okay.
Surplus property will be placed, like it says, on gut deals.
Yeah, that's what I was curious. Yeah. So the other items will be scrapped, you said?
Yes.
I have a question unrelated to the agenda about use of facilities that I just want to. Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry. Am I not talking loud enough? We need to work on the audio in this building. Yeah. I had a question for the board. Somebody had approached me, and I'm not even sure if they have gotten the direction from their entire committee, but from the Township Recreation Committee, and I wanted to just kind of put this out there. I told them I'd put it out there and get the feeling of the board. I don't know that they're specifically looking to go in this direction, but there was a discussion about Community Day and having a beer garden at Community Day. And I think possibly under our bylaws, that was something that would not be permitted on school grounds, Mr. Walton, and I don't mean to hit you off guard with this either, but is there anybody on the board that has any opinion on that? Like, yeah, I mean, everybody's for the beer garden, right? I mean, anybody object? Okay. Well, I told this person that I would approach the board with the question and for feedback.
We gotta do some homework here. We gotta call our insurance agent first. We'll have to check policy. Like, there's some homework that needs to.
Well, I'm sure that the township provides indemnity to the school board for use of the facilities, correct? From an insurance perspective?
Whoever uses the facilities do need to provide the
Right.
insurance certification.
Right.
Well, some schools have a beef and beer fundraiser kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
In their facilities. So I don't know if there's a law against it, but you might have to get a special license.
No, okay, so I just wanted to put it out there and get the feedback. It seems as though the feedback would be positive, so I'll report that back to this particular individual and see what happens. So, and again, I didn't mean to spring that on you either, Mr. Walton, because we hadn't had a
Still writing beer garden.
Beer garden.
Franklin BOE down on my notes.
So. So that, it just reminded me when we were talking about use of facilities. So, with that, are any other questions about the claims or operations rather? If not, I make a motion to approve operations committee items K1 through K18 as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other comments? If not, Trish, if you could call the roll, please.
Keen?
Yes.
Trace?
Yes.
Fellas? Miss Sally?
Yes.
Cunningham?
Yes.
Dougherty?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Fregoso?
Yes, I abstain from Willis 3 K1 and also the jointure on K10.
Noted. Mr. Brink?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Under old business, we have our 2023 verbal budget update. Trish, I guess if you want to just recap on that.
Yeah, not much to really report on as has changed from the last verbal update, given the pushback on the governor's address and receiving our state aid numbers. Those we will not receive until March 10th, as the governor's address has been moved to Tuesday, March 8th. We did receive a health insurance renewal increase of only 0.2%, which is very good renewal rate for our district. However, there still is the items to consider based on new teaching staff members and support staff members receiving tenure. Those contingency costs are costing about $333,000. There's also the Chapter 44 effect, which totals about $130,000 of a loss to the district. Additional budget changes and updates from the 21-22 budget. Child Study Team notes 6 additional out-of-district placements that are very highly likely to occur. Those costs are about $260,000. Technology items are the lease payment schedules that we need to maintain year over year. They total about $150,000 to $175,000. District servers need replacement. That's about $30,000. Firewall support renewal is about $12,000. So the total tech department increased about $100,000. Within the curriculum department, we're looking to provide additional reading specialist position. That's being budgeted about $59,000, but of course that's subject to change given the personnel who is hired for that position. Strategic plan initiatives at about $20,000 are included in the budget. As previously mentioned, in transportation, we have about 4 new passenger buses at a cost of $500,000 and 1 special education bus at about $100,000, and those are per the replacement schedule. Repair and maintenance includes the ESIP payment, number 2 of 20, at a cost of $136,000. Going over the revenue items, the tax levy, which makes up about 49% of our budget, Current levy is $11.2 million. Obviously, that's a question we're going to pose to the board in a few minutes as to, do we need to utilize all 2%? Do we need to utilize bank cap, so on and so forth. Tuition from Newfield runs about $2 million. That's about 8.9% of our revenue. And state aid is about 9.4 based on numbers that I have this year. That equals about 40% of our revenue. We have a bank cap availability total of $651,512. We utilize all of that. That would equate to a 5.77% tax increase, and that is on top of the 2% increase. Like I said, the state aid revenue, we don't have that. We get that on March 10th, and the Newfield tuition is roughly $2 million, and that's still the calculation process. Debt service cost of the district, $196,000. That's being covered by capital reserve fund monies. I know I've given you a lot of verbal information, and you did ask for the federal information for grants. So within the budget, we typically ask for some feedback based on 2% tax levy cap. Last few years, we've gone 0%. Just kind of want to get some feedback on what type of budget to propose come March 15th when we have our work session, since there's not so much other questions regarding that. I can go through and get the capital reserve balance. Obviously, Mike from the auditing firm said we have about 2.7 in capital reserve. We utilized about $400,000 in the current year's budget, so technically that 2.7 balance is down to 2.3 million. We're proposing to use about $2 million in this current budget for school buses, fuel tanks, and addressable fire heads within the schools in the administration building, and the debt service. So all of that money would bring the capital reserve balance down to about $484,000. Again, the maintenance reserve balance is about $1.3 million, and the 2021 fund balance is about $974,000. Questions?
Don't everyone ask it once, please.
Yeah. I know it's a lot of, again, I'll put this in the weekly update for physical and visual. But just be prepared that on March 15th, we're going to have a budget pretty much constructed. So if there's any type of questions or comments that you have about using a 2% budget, please let me know sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of difficult to even have a discussion about this without having the state aid numbers.
I understand that.
But given that, I mean, if the question is, do you want to raise taxes or do you not want to raise taxes? My answer is I don't want to raise taxes. I don't know if there's other board members that would like to raise taxes. They should voice that now. But, you know, at this point, I'd like to see what the budget looks like without.
I understand it's a difficult question to ask, not knowing what the other 40%, if we are going to have that 40% of state aid,
Right.
we're going to have less. I do understand that, but this is what it looks like right now in a rough estimate. So.
Well, yeah, I'm just we're trying to give you some sort of feedback. I mean, is there any board members that would like to raise taxes? Or?
No one wants to raise taxes, right?
Okay.
But
I'm just making sure. Sometimes I think some people do, but so at this point, we're going to assume that we're going to try and make something work without a tax increase. Is that a fair statement?
yes.
Okay.
I do feel like we should consider it. I mean, do a 2 years with no tax increase, and education standpoint, 2 years in a row with no tax increase is not always the best thing for our budget to go down another year.
I'll have more information to kind of support what.
I'm not saying 2%. I'm not saying
Agreed. But we will have other information to support, you know, the reasoning that we would in fact ask and recommend a 2% tax levy increase.
And I'm just gonna request again that when we do get the budget, if we could have it outline some of the specifics that the district is looking at to spend that money on to increase student achievement, the losses that we've had with COVID and so forth, because obviously those things would be pertinent for us to do.
We'll put that in the executive summary that we typically give you. That'll be ready for the 15th.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, if you want to decrease taxes too, I'm open to that as well. you know, but just not increasing would be good. So.
Moving on.
So is that it, Trish? Do you have anything else on the?
No, that's it.
No?
Like I said, I'll put this in the weekly update.
Anyone have any further questions on the budget update? Yeah. All right. When's our next meeting? This 16th?
We have a work session on the 16th.
So you're not going to get the numbers till the 15th, and I mean, I guess you'll be busy.
Correct.
Getting that to
March
us.
10th, that should happen.
Right. March 10th?
Yes.
Okay, I thought you said the 15th. I'm sorry. I mean, have you heard any, like, you know, unofficial information? Like, do you have any suspicion to believe that we're
The
not?
only thing that I've heard is that since given the S2 calculations, takes into consideration the last 5 years of the average enrollment.
Right.
It's clear that enrollment has declined.
Right.
So we could see a decrease. Last year we saw a decrease of about $13,000, which is a lot easier to swallow than $100,000 or so.
Right.
So unfortunately, I can't speculate as to how much, but I would anticipate some sort of decrease.
But you're not expecting any kind of, like, unsuspected, like, major shift, right?
No.
Do you know if you haven't heard of
I'm
anything?
hoping not, but again, the 5-year enrollment average could come into play.
Right. Speaking of that enrollment, I mean, at what point do we start looking at, you know, what adjustments we're going to make based on the enrollment, as far as, you know, reducing staff and stuff like that? I mean,
Just taking a look, I mean, we're certainly hesitant to do that, knowing that COVID certainly affected, especially that, you know, that now first grade class was a kindergarten class. We were expecting a larger kindergarten class this year. It didn't happen. You know, if we see a trend like that continue, then yeah, we're going to have those conversations. I'm just a little hesitant to do that. But, you know, also in the lower grades, the lower class size is better educationally. So probably a little premature to have that conversation. I want to, you know, we got our kindergarten enrollment that had just, that registration piece just opened up this week.
So the theory being that a lot of parents chose not to.
And shifted to the private schools when the private schools were going the 5-day. You know, we're starting to see it trickle back, but the private school enrollment, as far as we saw going to private school, did increase.
Right.
Absolutely. So.
But probably another year we'll have more data, is what you're saying, and
Yeah.
then we'll be looking at that information. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't make any suggestions, recommendations to change as of yet.
No, I was just curious at what point, you know, we look at that. But all right, moving on to the mask mandate discussion. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory what this discussion's about. As you all know, the governor has indicated that his executive order will let expire on March the 7th, requiring the kids to wear masks in school. Is there anyone here on the board that would like to comment on that?
Yes, I would.
Sure.
I really think children have been masked long enough. I don't think we need to wait until March 7th. If we make it optional, parents can decide. Give them back the option to do what they want for their children.
Okay. Anyone?
I have 5 children. I have 1 child in each school in this town, and I've watched all of them suffer. My one son has ADHD, and it's been terrible for him with the mask and his anxiety and everything. I have a kindergartner who has gone through pre-K and kindergarten with a mask. She's struggling learning like speech and reading. She said, I can't see the teacher, and it's hard for her to understand. We've been masked long enough. It's ridiculous. If we could take them off before March 7th, I think that would be great. If we can't, then I think it should be parent choice.
Anyone else have a comment on that? Or, would you like us to take a vote specific to the masking after March the 7th?
Yes, for
clarity? Or?
Yeah, for formality and just
Okay.
for the minutes of the agenda, I certainly would.
Sure, okay. So, help me out slightly here, Mike.
Uh,
Let me make sure I understand. You said the mask mandate's listed on the 7th.
7th, yeah.
I think I'm going to make a motion whether, as of that date, we allow the children not to wear masks, or if you want an option of having them wear masks.
To make it optional, correct?
Right.
Make it optional.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's always going to be optional, but I guess the motion would be that the board is not going to require masking.
After March 7th.
My comment was why we're waiting for March 7th.
Because it's still a mandate.
Right.
Okay, so I have a question.
Sure.
In this letter, it gives different colors for levels of outbreak. Are we going to be following that? has X amount of cases. If we go into code orange, it requires masks. If we go through code red, it requires masks. So we don't have to be following that.
That's really up to the board. Now, they did come out with additional recommendations today. It literally came out this afternoon. I have not had the chance to really digest that. They are having like a work session or a Zoom meeting for us on Friday, just from an interpretation standpoint. But there is a recommendation, there has been for boards to make sure that the masks are put on as the levels get higher. So if that's something that the board wants to consider. Again, I have not had the chance to digest that. It literally came out a couple hours before this board meeting, so just not prepared to talk about that.
Anyone else? So I would make a motion that the board not require any face coverings from this point forward, exclusive of, obviously the executive order going forward. Is that clear or not? Everyone confused with what my motion is?
From today forward?
No, I'm saying that
March 7th?
I don't think the board ever agreed to face coverings. However, we were complying with the executive order. So assuming my motion would be that aside from the executive order, the board is not going to require face coverings.
Because you're really saying once the executive order is lifted, it would not be required.
Yeah, for this particular motion, yeah.
I think that makes sense.
So to clarify, Jason, are you saying that we wait till March 7th?
Yes.
I'm not advocating for that personally, but I'm saying that's what the motion, the first
That's what the motion
would be. I mean, if someone else wants to make a amendment or,
I'd like to make an amendment to follow the CDC guidelines for levels of outbreak.
okay, is there a second on that or no? Okay, I don't hear a second, Leah, so the motion on the table is to not require masking once the mandate is lifted. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Trish, you want to call the roll on that, please?
Doyle?
Yes.
Fregoso?
Yes.
Keen?
Yes.
Trace?
Abstain.
Noted. Fellas?
Yes.
Caselli?
Yes, but I would like it noted that I think we should follow the CDC guidelines for potential exposure.
Noted. Cunningham?
Yes.
Doherty?
Yes.
Brand?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, simmer down out there, Mr. Stein. We're not done yet. Yeah. So the other question was, what we're going to do from now till March the 7th. I mean, I've had that discussion with Mr. Walton. I don't know if Mr. Walton wants to enlighten the board on what the outcome of that discussion was and your position on that, as far as
what?
Well, as far as if the board would want to proceed with putting it on the record that we want to make masks optional from this time right now forward, regardless of the executive order.
Again, you guys, my role here is the superintendent, chief advisor to the board. Okay, I would never advise the board to go against the state or federal mandate. That's the position that I have to take sitting here at this seat. Okay?
So would I.
So, ultimately, March 7th is when it is lifted. Then we have take off the mass celebration party on March 7th. I don't know what to tell you. So March 7th is what you guys just passed, right?
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, there was some discussion about doing it prior to March 7th, so I just wanted to get your opinion on the record for that.
Just for the record, I would never, recommend going against the mandate.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah.
But that's a good segue into another conversation. Is that where you're going?
Which was what?
The buses.
Oh yeah, the school buses. and masks on the school buses. Does anybody on the board have a comment regarding masks on the school buses, or what their feelings on that are?
I don't think they should mask on school buses. It's pointless. Half of them don't ride masks on the bus now. I know my kids don't.
Right.
But just to be clear, though, just because the masks are coming off on March 7th, that's a state mandate that's being lifted. There's a federal mandate in place where the children are required to wear them on the bus. And that's a CDC order, and that actually is in the recommendation that came down from the Department of Health. So
That's CDC.
that is
Federal
a,
EO does not cover school buses.
yes, it does.
CDC.
Yeah, the CDC order covers school buses, yes.
And how many times has the CDC changed their mind?
But they don't make law.
I'm,
They're a recommendation.
Right, it's a recommendation, right?
no, it isn't. Mr. Borrelli, I'd ask that you chime in.
Right, yeah.
As far as I know, everything I've read, it is a federal mandate, correct?
It's a federal mandate. It's, the county has confirmed that it is required on school buses, the county superintendent. It was also in the state, so you more or less have a county, state, and federal mandate for masks on the school buses. So I also could not recommend you as a public body to go against that. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, just from the liability standpoint, that if you have everyone saying there should be, and God forbid there was something that occurred because masks weren't worn, I think you're pretty defenseless on that. Considering that everywhere you look, they're indicating that it does apply to school buses.
The National Association of People Transportation says it is not covered by there. School buses are not mentioned specifically in EO 13998, and they are legally exempt under section 5302 of Title 49 of the United States Code. Section 14, subsection B, I don't know.
That's an organization of some sort that's
National
commenting on it.
Association of People Transportation.org.
Yeah, I mean, personally, all the information that I've researched and I've found, doesn't appear as though that school buses were included in the order. I printed out the executive order from the Biden administration. I printed out the CDC order. Nowhere, anywhere can I find any mention of school buses. The only place I see any mention of the school bus is in the frequently asked questions section of the CDC website. So the way I look at it, it's not specific to school buses. So I would like to see us, move forward, not requiring the masks on the buses. I mean, aside from the fact that it makes no sense at all to require them, I don't really feel I'm in agreement with Mrs. Cunningham that the order doesn't cover the school buses. So.
Can we get clarification on that for the next meeting? About school buses?
I mean, we can, but CDC made the order and they told you what their interpretation is, which they're saying, yes, we can include school
Cover
buses.
school buses, thank you.
Well, I mean, the ironic part is, like, I have it here. It's 13 pages long. It says a lot of things in this order, and it covers a lot of things, but one thing that's absent is the word school bus. So,
Looking at page 3 on the guidance, it says, current CDC's federal order and is the associated FAQ until lifted, the only exception for children under well, that's under, but it says including school buses regardless of vaccination. Masks must be worn by all passengers on buses, including school buses.
yeah, you're reading the guidance from the New Jersey Department of Health, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm reading the actual CDC order. It's right here. I'll provide a copy of it for you. So, I mean, my position is we don't require them on the bus. So, I don't know if you want that in the form of a motion as well. Or.
I would want, my personal belief would be to make a formal motion and pass that in the minutes. But again, I'm in a position to not recommend that to the board, just in regards to the federal mandate.
Right.
Just to go on the record. I mean, you guys do what you want to do, but I'm going to go on the record saying that I can't advise the board to go against the federal mandate.
Okay. Well, I make a motion that we proceed without the requirement of masking on the school buses as of March the 7th.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any other questions or comments? And my apologies for putting you in a bad position, Mr. Walton, on the interpretation of this, but
When we all, I mean, I just want to remind everyone, when you took your oath of office to become a board member, you did take an oath to uphold all federal, state laws, and this would be part of that.
I think we took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of New Jersey. And the mandate that came from Governor Murphy was not law. It was never passed by the legislation.
But there is ramifications for not following those.
Pardon?
There is punishments if you don't follow the guidelines and everything put forth through the state.
I understand what you're saying, Leah.
Mike, I guess the risk we're running here is that any, child that comes down with COVID, they would have had adverse symptoms. They could sue us because we don't have this in place on the bus. So any circumstance of COVID becomes a liability. That would be my
How could they say they got it from the bus during school, they don't have?
Well, how can we say that they did?
Right, and our lawyer is telling us we shouldn't. Our counsel, we appointed.
Well, one interesting fact is like 42 other states have never required masks in school or on the bus. And, you know, I don't think any of them are getting sued that I'm aware of. So I honestly, I don't really think there's much of a liability perspective. I mean, that'd be a pretty tough case to bring that you caught COVID on the school bus. So that is not a concern of mine. But are there any other comments or questions? If not, Trish, could you call the roll, please?
Wait, can you say the vote again?
Motion to not require masking on the buses as of March the 7th. Which, you know, along the same guys that we're not requiring them in school. So. And I'd like to reiterate that regardless of the debate of whether there's a federal mandate or there's not, it's complete insanity to think that it would make a difference to have our kids sitting in school for 7-8 hours a day, to walk outside to enter a school bus, which door opens 20 times throughout the course of the ride, and put them in a mask. It's completely insane. So the federal mandate aside, that's my position on it. So. Any other questions? If not, if you call the roll, please, Trish.
I think I can, I'll try.
Sure, thank you.
Bellis?
Yes.
Caselli?
No.
Cunningham?
Yes.
Doherty?
Yes.
Doyle? Fregoso?
No.
Keen?
Yes.
Trace?
No.
Britt?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Applause section, go ahead. Go ahead. The next item on our old business is contact tracing. As you know, at our last meeting, we voted to modify the quarantine guidelines, essentially allowing healthy children to stay in school and not requiring them to be quarantined as the result of a close contact. I mean, at this point, the discussion is whether or not we want to continue doing contact tracing at all. Some districts have moved away from doing it completely. It appears as though, from the information that's provided in our last weekly update, and if you have any additional information since you last reported it, is that out of 17 close contacts, 16 of those students, parents chose to allow their students to stay in school. So at this point, the contact tracing seems to be essentially a non-issue. So I don't know if you want to.
Well,
I mean,
I can chime in. I did speak with the House superintendent, who he had sent that letter out to his community, and Mr. Brand had sent that to me. I spoke with him, was it last week, I believe, and then I spoke with him again this week. So He received very mild pushback from the community. Mainly the concerns that he received were from community members that have immune-compromised families. So it's something that the board would need to consider. Also, I think the board needs to consider at this point we do have 0 active cases, so contact tracing really has gone away on its own. I mean, at this point, the nurses really aren't doing contact tracing because we don't have cases of COVID. And as I said at the last meeting, it is my belief, my recommendation to the board that we be more transparent than less. If it's minimal work on our nurses to notify a child, I think we do have that responsibility to notify a parent. What that parent does with that information, they do it. But at the end of the day, again, contact tracing has pretty much gone away on its own. I don't know that we would be accomplishing much here. Again, as a superintendent, I do believe we have the responsibility of letting parents know that their child may have been in close contact. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
But I also, again, keep in mind, I am going to need to dive into these new recommendations because now we're pulling the masks off, so that certainly affects what a definition of a close contact. Remember, prior it was 3 feet when they were masked up, 6 feet when they weren't. So we're going to have to take a look at that. We're also going to have to take a look, and again, I don't want to apologize because it only came out here, a few hours before this, but we're also going to need to take a look at, are they going to recommend that the kids wear a mask coming back off of a positive COVID case? As it stood moving into this, they would stay isolated for 5 days. They could come back to school after 5 days as long as they were able to safely and securely wear a mask. I haven't gotten that far, whether that's going to be the recommendation. My gut tells me it will. So, as a board, are we going to then require the kids that come back from COVID to wear a mask for days 6 through 10? They're the type of conversations that we may need to have moving forward. But, again, I'm just not prepared to have those right this minute because I didn't dissect that at all.
Okay.
Well, why don't we Troy, you said you have your meeting on Friday?
Friday.
I don't know if it's something we want to wait till, we're back here 15th, 16th?
16th.
3 weeks. Or if it's something we want to discuss prior to that, but I think it's probably a good idea to have Troy get some more information and, like you said, see, I completely agree with you, Jason. But I think for Troy to be able to recommend or talk to us, gives him the opportunity to have the information and then give it to us. And then we can take it as we want and move forward or not move forward.
That's fine.
And the reality is, given the very low level of cases right now, it's really not affecting much. It's not.
So basically we'll table that discussion and revisit it on the 16th. Is the rest of the board in agreement with that? Yeah. Okay. And with the understanding that I'll give you additional time to review the guidance and
the recommendations.
Yeah, the recommendations. Yeah. Okay. So nothing else on that, right? So the next item is our board retreat. Michelle had, our last meeting, requested that we look at dates for that, and Mr. Walton did reach out to Terry Lewis, who in turn provided these dates, which she's available. So
Right, so there's 3 dates there, not just the 2. So it's the 29th, 30th, and 31st. She's available all 3 of those evenings, and she suggested about a 2-hour time frame.
So what's the pleasure of the board?
I'm fine with any.
I won't be there.
I'm okay.
Any?
Yeah, I mean, I'm flexible, I guess. So. I mean, the topic of the retreat, I guess, is going to be, she's going to review oarsmanship, so to speak, I guess, is that?
Yeah, and roles, responsibility, as we have 50% of our board is new or within their first.
Yeah.
Well, I think we need to speak with her too about board goals. I'm not saying that can be done that night, but we don't have board goals and haven't had board goals
Right.
for a while, so.
And I think that'll naturally be the conversation beyond. But, so give me some direction so I can call her. Pick a day.
Well, I think it's the most important for the new board members to be available. So, I mean, Mrs. Caselli already goes to like 50 meetings a month with the NJSBA, so she's not going to miss much. But are you guys?
The 30th or the 31st is better for me, but if I have to do the 29th, I can work it out.
All right.
What time frame?
That was the next
Like an
question.
evening, like 6 to 8 or
6 to
something.
8.
Yeah.
31st works best for me.
Yeah, if everybody's in agreement, 31st. Yeah, you're good.
31?
All right, 31st. What day is that?
That's a Thursday.
Thursday. I think they moved that
I
again.
will call her, confirm, and add it to the weekly update, the confirmation with me.
So that's March 31st, right? Yeah. All right.
Jason, I have a question about the masks.
Sure. Go ahead.
Is there a way to, if the kids come to school now, from now to March 7th, that if they come without a mask, if there's no repercussions?
There hasn't been repercussions all along, we've just been reminding them that they need to wear them.
From the teachers, there has been a lot of pushback from the teachers. If my kid takes a mask down, they're, pull your mask up, pull your mask up. So the teachers are constantly, I know, my son says, none of his classes, he gets a mask. So what I'm asking is there a way that between now and March 7th, if the kids go to school maskless, there be no harassment, no discipline, no sit down to get a mask to the principal? Is that something we can do?
I mean, I don't know if you want to answer that.
I wouldn't recommend that, the board just voted for March 7th, so that was the voice of the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way to do that would be to, have another motion, and have the board vote on it, but, I mean, given,
There should be mask breaks because that was built into our agreement. So if there is mask breaks occurring, then I would reach out to your child's teacher.
It's multiple teachers and multiple.
I would reach out to multiple teachers and then they can have this work. But that's in our reopening, mask breaks, we put in there specifically for that reason, so that there wouldn't be any discussion about that, whether who had them or who didn't, that it's pretty much uniform.
I was under the impression that there wasn't really any disciplinary action being taken if a student showed up without a mask.
To my knowledge, there's not, and to my knowledge, they get mask breaks, so.
Right. I mean, I'm assuming moving towards March the 7th that, everybody's well aware of the direction we're heading in, and maybe things will be a little bit different. So moving on to new business, there's a resolution on the agenda that I'd actually asked Mr. Walton to reach out to Middletown to get a copy of the resolution that they're considering. And I see that our copy still has their information in it, so disregard that. Obviously, our resolution in place of Middletown will say Franklin Township if you read the resolution, but in summary, it's a resolution supporting current Senate Bill 1200. It's with the legislative authority in Trenton right now, which essentially kind of addresses a lot of these issues that we've just been discussing as far as the governor's emergency powers, so on and so forth. So I'm assuming you guys all had an opportunity to review the resolution. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer anything I can. But
Can you just summarize it? I haven't had a chance to review it.
it's basically just a resolution, voicing support, assuming we would pass it, that the board supports the bill. It's, I think, Senate Bill 1200. There's, a multitude of different senators that are sponsoring it and co-sponsoring it, but essentially, my interpretation of the bill is it just kind of it addresses some of the emergency powers of the governor and the fact that some people think that those powers have been overextended by the governor. So, I mean, in summary, that's kind of what the bill is.
How many more time does
I'm sorry?
I would need more time to review it.
Right.
Yeah, so if it's short,
So,
If I could, I think what the Senate bill is trying to do is restore some of the power to the state legislature because things were not done. Remember, we all had 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And the governor was given emergency powers. Well, it's been a 2-year-plus emergency. And I think the state legislature, both the Assembly and the Senate, feel like they've been overlooked and they'd like to have, their powers back to pass laws.
thank you.
yeah, I mean, the resolution does a pretty good job of giving a summarization of the bill. So anyway, I'm going to introduce that resolution. Is there any other questions? So I make,
The
yeah,
specific
I'm sorry.
part, Jason, might as well, since there's only 2 sentences you really want to know about. Jim permits the legislature to terminate certain declarations of emergency by the governor if they have a 2/3 majority in the legislature. So they can do that to overturn certain emergency declarations and limiting emergency declarations to 60 days unless the legislature authorizes it. So that's the main part of it.
Did you hear that?
Yes, I heard.
Yeah. So if there's no other questions, I'm not going to read the whole resolution, but I'll, and obviously before we send it out, we'll insert our. Yeah, we actually already have an edited version. Oh, okay, great. So let me get back to the agenda here. So I make a motion to approve. It's listed as BOE 1 resolution supporting Senate Bill 1200. So, do I have a second?
Second.
All right. If there's no other questions, if you could call the roll, please, Trish.
Fregoso?
Yes.
Keen?
Yes.
Trace?
Yes.
Bellis?
Yes.
Maselli?
Yes.
Cunningham?
Yes.
Doherty?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. There's no other new business listed. No one had followed the proper procedure of requesting a new business be listed on the agenda, but if anyone has anything, Mrs. Cunningham?
Real quick, we, for the policy committee, we're looking to see if there's someone who might be able to stand in sometimes and make some of the meetings, because our meetings aren't scheduled like they used to be. They sometimes come up maybe a week or 2 because we get an alert from Job Esme. Jonathan's also on the negotiations committee, so he sometimes has a hard time making those policy meetings when they come up like that. So I was just looking to see if there was anybody who might be interested in standing in when Jonathan can't be there, totally voluntary if you want to. I can just reach out to you, let you know that we're meeting, and if you can make it, you come. Pretty much everything's there when we get there, so you don't have to prep for anything. We kind of discuss everything, go through it there. So if there's anybody that's interested in doing that, just reach out to me, and I'll just put you on my list for, when we're not sure Jonathan can be, or when we know Jonathan can't make it. With that being said, there was also something brought up to myself and also to Jonathan about looking into a policy in regards to use of telephone during executive sessions. If the board wants to create a policy limiting or negating
As a former DJ, I'm all over it. And DJ Troy will be all over that.
That was just my, thank you.
Listen, just adding to Michelle's, shifting back to that policy, there's really a full-time spot. So, I mean, if you want to be a full-time member on that committee,
Yeah, I mean.
you certainly can be, not just a fill-in. If you want to be
that's
full-time,
true. You're absolutely right, Troy, that's true.
feel free.
Yeah.
It's actually a very, very coveted position to be on the policy committee, so.
It is.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of the audio system, I saw Mr. Porter just left, but every time I see him at the meetings, he complains that he can't hear us, and that's why I asked if the public could hear us. So I'm not really sure, because I heard you testing it before the meeting started. I was in the break room and I could hear you, so I'm not really sure what we can do to enhance it. It's kind of a weird room, but if there is an opportunity to enhance it, that would be good. Yeah.
See if we can fit that in the budget.
Yeah.
You'll see it listed in the budget.
Too soon for that, Joe?
Yeah.
No?
No, yeah, I'm sure we can find money for that. So anyone else have new business, or if not, I'm going to move on to our second public comment portion. Make a motion, we open to the public. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed, abstentions? All right, we're open to the public if anyone would like to step forward. Mr. Stagliani.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Would you like a microphone, or are you good?
I'm sorry?
Microphone? Or?
I don't think so.
No, okay.
Thank you. Before I get started, the one area where I witnessed that Mr. Walton was extremely successful in was him as a teacher.
Duly noted. Please put that in the minutes.
That is in the minutes.
Members of the board, for those of you who don't know me, or some of you that are new on the board, I'm John Stagliano. I'm a sixth grade teacher. I'm in my 31st year here in the township, and much to Mr. Walton's dismay, I'm not planning on going anyplace anytime soon. So I also want to make the point that I've taught here for 31 years. I've seen my first generation students grow into adulthood, and I'm now teaching second generation of families. Further, I want to point out that the statement I'm making today is my own personal opinion. It does not reflect the position of the Township of Franklin Education Association. I was president of the association for 20 years, proudly served my membership in everything, including contract negotiations. But I feel that I need to make a few points. This past 2 years has had a major negative effect on our children. From a learning perspective, I have seen many children who are behind in their basic learning skills and habits. I cannot remember when, prior to March of 2020, that I've had so many children who had poor work habits, especially in meeting due dates. I definitely believe this is a direct result of children being out of school more than they were in school. More importantly, they are too far behind in their basic social skills. Forced quarantines that have resulted in learning on a computer, wearing masks that take away the individuality of the children, and the simple fear that was generated in the past 2 years have hurt our children in ways that we may not see for years to come. However, in this township, things are not all bad. Last month, the board made a decision to put quarantine in the hands of the parents. I believe this was a fantastic decision, and in my opinion, it should have always been this way. Earlier this year, I had students who, through no fault of their own, were in so-called close contact with another student and placed on quarantine. I had a few students that this happened to multiple times, including one young man who was in this situation 3 different times. That equated to him to seeing 30 days of in-person instruction being virtual and not being able to have the same interaction with his classmates. Since the board made the decision last month, I personally have seen attendance be much better. Yes, so-called COVID cases have dropped, but I've seen attendance a lot better. I attribute this to the decision this board made. Finally, we've ended this mandate on masking our students. This is long overdue. There have been many medical professionals who said from the beginning that masks do very little to stop this virus. Thankfully, we will get to see our children's faces again, and our children will be more comfortable, and as a result, hopefully feel more like themselves. However, I'm afraid that the unmasking of our children and the 5-day quarantine may be temporary measures. There are forces, including the NJEA, which I am a member of, that are going to continue to attempt to influence the governor to return to the draconian measures that we have lived under for the past 2 years. As parents, grandparents, teachers, and board members, we cannot let this happen. In 2020, the teachers' unions in this country did everything they could to keep the schools closed. They tried to convince parents, teachers, and school boards that the ventilations in our schools were so antiquated that we were all going to have mass illness that would lead to death. Obviously, this was a scare tactic that was being used to push a political agenda to keep children in their homes. I am grateful to the Board of Education, under the direction of Mr. Walton, who never fell for this lie for a minute. We've kept our schools open, even when our neighboring districts did not. This board and the board members immediately preceding this board followed Mr. Walton's leadership and guidance, and we had our children in school. They may not have been to school every day, but they were in school. And as soon as we were able to get the children back in school every day last year, we did. In Franklin Township, we did what was best for our children. However, as I stated earlier, this battle is not over. I urge the parents and members of the board to make sure that all decisions regarding masking and quarantine remain in the hands of the local school district. If we don't do this, I feel certain that there will be another variant just in time for next school year, and our children will be right back in the same situation. Masks, quarantine, fear, and loss of in-person instruction. We do this by reaching out to Trenton. We do this by the board passing a resolution, which you just did. To our governor, we do this by mass emailing our state representatives and the governor and let them know that we are tired of our children being hurt by ridiculous mandates. Let's stand together as a community to make sure that our children are always the #1 priority. In closing, on behalf of the students and parents, I would like to thank this board for doing what is best for the children in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Anyone else like to be heard? Okay, Mr. Morris. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. When you're doing the budget, I would respectfully ask that you seriously review the presentation that was done last month from Jamie on the students who fell behind, that there's going to need to be substantial resources dedicated to help those students get brought back up to where they should be. That a zero budget is almost impossible to go forward because of that, with the students being restricted from school and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Seeing no one, I make a motion that we close the second public portion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. We have our upcoming meeting from on March the 16th.
That's next door.
That'll be over at the administration building. Is there anything else? Any other comments anyone has? Or, no? If not, I make a motion to adjourn. 8:38. I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?